After the sudden and heartbreaking death of Bishop Carlton Pearson, a heavy silence fell over the gospel world, a silence filled with unanswered questions and buried pain. But now, that silence has been shattered. Out of the shadows, Gina Gauthier, his estranged ex-wife, has stepped forward with revelations that are shaking the very foundation of his legacy. What she's just revealed isn't a tribute, it's a truth the church never wanted exposed. Behind the pulpit and public praise, there were secrets, painful, hidden, and deeply personal. And for the first time, Gina is speaking out. Her words aren't just emotional, they're explosive. This is the side of Bishop Pearson the world was never meant to hear. And believe me, you won't want to miss what she had to say. Bishop Carlton Pearson wasn't just a preacher, he was a force. A trailblazer. One of the most commanding voices in American gospel history. He dared to question religious boundaries, took bold stands, and reached millions with his message of inclusion and hope. But while the world saw a man of power, purpose, and praise, few knew about the quiet storm brewing behind closed doors, a storm that would one day threaten to consume everything he built. Now, in the wake of his untimely and heartbreaking passing, his estranged ex-wife, Gina Gauthier, has stepped into the light, breaking years of silence to share what really happened. Her revelations don't just fill in the gaps, they tear open the curtain behind one of gospel's most revered figures. What she exposes changes everything, about the man, the ministry, and the long, painful fall from grace that no one saw coming. In this video, we dive deep into the unraveling of a gospel empire, and the haunting truths that were buried with it, until now. Behind the polished sermons and the thunderous applause were secrets no one dared to speak, until now. From hidden heartbreaks to emotional betrayals, Gina Gauthier endured it all in silence. Her voice was pushed aside, her pain buried under the weight of a gospel empire. But today, that silence is broken. This is the untold side of Bishop Carlton Pearson's legacy, a story laced with spiritual conflict, personal loss, and a church that, according to Gina, did everything it could to hide the truth. She claims the fallout from Carlton's controversial teachings didn't just shake pulpits, it tore apart their family. And now, a haunting voice memo released by Gina is leaving even his most loyal followers stunned. This isn't just a story about a marriage, it's about the collapse of a carefully guarded image. Before the controversy, before the headlines, Bishop Carlton Pearson was the golden child of American gospel, a spiritual powerhouse with unmatched charisma and a voice that moved thousands. Born in 1953 in San Diego, California, Pearson was raised under the strict doctrines of Pentecostalism. He rose quickly, capturing the attention of none other than Oral Roberts, becoming his protege and spiritual son. Carlton wasn't just another preacher, he was a movement. By the late 80s and 90s, he had built a gospel empire through his Higher Dimensions Evangelistic Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma, drawing massive crowds, millions of dollars, and national influence. A lot of people came to his sermons, and he shook hands with both political and religious leaders. He put on huge ISUSA conferences that were shown on TBN, and TD Jake to Donnie McClurkin were all friends of his. But as his following grew, so did his worries. At some point, Carlton Pearson started to doubt the basic ideas he used to teach. As Pearson watched video of the Rwandan genocide one night, he said that God told him that hell wasn't real. In that moment, what he called the gospel of inclusion was born. And that's where things began to go wrong. The heads of the church turned their backs. He was called a heretic by groups. His group shrank. His money went down the drain. And old friends became less close in public. The public didn't know, though, how hard all of this was on his wife. Gina Gauthier, his wife, was quietly weathering the storm behind the scenes. She used to be a life guide and work as a political aide. As the church turned against Carlton, it put a lot of stress on his family. They don't tell you this part. While everyone talked about his religion, the woman who had been slowly fading in the background got no attention until now. She was a force in her own right before she became famous as the wife of a controversial bishop. A very smart woman with a lot of experience in coaching, psychology, and political planning. Gina used to work as an assistant in the Clinton White House. More than just a pastor's wife, she was. She was smart, confident, and strong. People thought she and Carlton Pearson would be a great match when they got married in 1993. A powerful spiritual leader and a smart, articulate woman who knows a lot about politics. But as their relationship developed behind the religious glitz, Gina began to see a very different side of things. Many people say that Gina was quiet and shy during most of Bishop Pearson's years in service. She didn't talk much in public and never questioned her husband's beliefs in front of the congregation. She kept up the image of a loving and caring wife. It wasn't her choice to be quiet, though, as she recently said. "I had to stay alive." After Bishop Pearson's death, Gina made a moving confession that blew everyone away. Not only did the church's rules keep her quiet for years, but so did the man himself. As Carlton's fame grew, Gina says she was often pushed to the side, told to stay out of the way, and told not to question his religious or personal choices. Gina said in an interview that went viral on social media, "I was trained to be quiet. You wave, smile, and look pretty, but when the lights go out, the whole ministry looks on you, and no one ever asks if you're okay." She says that as Carlton taught more unpopular ideas and was turned down by many evangelicals, the problems didn't just happen outside of Carlton's church, but also inside it. Their home turned into a war zone of deep betrayal, spiritual conflict, and emotional chaos. Gina gave the impression that she didn't agree with Carlton on many religious issues, not just about hell. This made her feel more and more alone. She even said that he might have used spiritual manipulation to make choices that made her feel helpless and unimportant. "I didn't say anything about one of the most powerful parts of what she said out of respect. But being quiet can hold you back, and I have nothing left to lose after all these years." According to Gina, their marriage became less solid as Carlton's religious exile got worse. She says that therapy was turned down a lot of the time. Things that were really wrong were ignored, and emotional neglect became the standard. She said she felt mentally and spiritually deprived and alone. A woman who lived under the light of a guy that everyone either adored or feared. The worst part is that she says no one ever asked her side of the story. Not the church, not her friends, not even the people who used to call her First Lady. And now, years after they got a divorce and he died, she's finally telling the truth. Gina didn't just talk about mental distance and manipulation, though. What she said next will blow your mind. Some of Pearson's best friends were shocked when she hinted at a bigger betrayal. There were clear signs of trouble in Gina Gauthier's marriage to Bishop Carlton Pearson by the time she filed for divorce in 2015. They were very open. But even back then, most people didn't know how bad the cuts really were. It wasn't just about having different beliefs or the stress of being a minister. Gina's most recent statements say that the betrayal she went through was much more personal and devastating. Gina hinted at multiple affairs in a statement that has since gone viral in gospel and church commentary circles. She said that she found Carlton's emotional and physical cheating at different times, even when he was at the top of his spiritual leadership game. As time goes on, you start to see that your husband has turned into a man of his own faith. In a talk, she said, "I wasn't just dealing with church hurt. I was going through sadness at home." She talks about getting text messages late at night, hearing rumors from people who work at the church, and even seeing what she calls unholy connections that make her very uncomfortable, both as a wife and as a woman who is watching her marriage fall apart. Gina was polite and didn't directly name anyone, but she made it clear that she thinks there were people close to her husband, even in the church, who helped him get away with his sins and covered them up. Her story goes that these weren't just random encounters with strangers or desires, they were planned affairs that went unnoticed because of Carlton's status and power. Even scarier is Gina's claim that she was often lied to when she tried to talk about these problems. People told her she was too emotional, not spiritual enough, or jealous of the church, she says. She said that this strategy made her question her own reality and was a form of psychic abuse that slowly broke her down. "He was the bishop for everyone. But I was the one who slept next to him every night, so I saw things about him that no one in the pulpit would let me see. She then talks about a turning point, a chat that happened late one night after a conference. That's when, according to her, Carlton finally admitted to having an inappropriate relationship. She says that instead of repentance, what happened next was a spiritual defense. He is said to have told her that the stress of being shunned by Christians had gotten to him and that connecting with other people was how he dealt with it. She says that moment broke her heart. She didn't leave right away. A lot of women in church marriages stay, and she did too. She said a prayer. She hoped. She even tried to forget about it. But over time, the weight of betrayal and spiritual neglect made her feel like she wasn't seen. That wasn't the only thing that was wrong. It was about having faith. She thought she was making a kingdom with a holy man. She says she was used as a pawn in a story that cared more about appearances than truth. She says it hurts even more that some spiritual leaders told her not to speak out because they thought it would hurt the church or ruin Carlton's legacy. They told me people would see me as angry, bitter, and like a woman who was turned down. They didn't see me as a woman who had been hurt, a wife who had been wronged, or a person. And just when you thought things couldn't get any more difficult, Gina told the gospel world something that shocked everyone. A secret recording she made of the last few months of their marriage. She hasn't released the whole voice memo to the public yet, but it's said to contain a conversation between her and Carlton in which he allegedly admits to changing church stories to hide the truth about their breakup and keep up his public image while their family was falling apart behind the scenes. Some snippets have already started to get around, and if they are true, they could bring up a lot of questions about who knew what and when. They don't want you to know this shocking fact, though. Gina says this was never about getting back at someone. She didn't come forward to get attention or to say bad things about a dead man. She says she's talking now because her pain from his death is still not over. A truth that was buried for too long by titles, collars, and crowds. I loved him. I truly married him. But good women get tired of acting. Even more troubling than Gina Gauthier's shocking revelations may be the wall of silence that surrounded her pain for years. She says that this silence wasn't just created by Bishop Pearson but also by the very institutions that claim to stand for truth and justice. Getting better. The Black Church has been a strong force in politics, society, and religion for many years. But for women like Gina, that same presence turned into a wall that kept powerful men safe and kept those who were suffering from speaking out. Gina talks about times she reached out to respected church leaders, mentors, elders, and even bishops to get advice, support, and kindness. Instead, she says she was blamed, sidestepped, or denied what she said. She told them that they didn't want to hear it. They told me I had to look out for the church and feel like I was a part of something bigger than myself. But what about my mind and soul? Someone in power is said to have told her that a good first lady knows how to suffer in silence. A declaration that left her stunned, silenced, and emotionally shattered. Gina's tale exposes an uncomfortable reality. Many religious institutions are greater involved with recognition than restoration. When pastors falter, the intuition is frequently to keep the logo, now not to hold leaders accountable or take care of the ones they hurt along the way. Within the case of Bishop Pearson, that culture of silence ran even deeper due to his debatable theological stance. As soon as he started preaching the gospel of inclusion, rejecting the idea of hell and embracing conventional salvation, the evangelical world unexpectedly became its returned on him. Pearson changed into classified a heretic. Corporations distanced themselves. TV networks dropped him. But even then, the focal point remained on his non-secular rebellion, now not the emotional and personal toll it had on the ones closest to him. Gina was in lots of approaches collateral harm. Her ache became invisible, her voice disregarded. And it wasn't just church leaders who appeared the alternative way, even church individuals, those who as soon as referred to as her first lady who attended her girls' meetings, who hugged her after Sunday carrier. Many of them vanished whilst the talk hit. She turned into, as she puts it, abandoned 2 times. Once through her husband and as soon as with the aid of the very community that promised to stand via her. There's this illusion that the church is a secure area for ladies. But too often we're informed to pray it away, stay quiet, and keep smiling through the pain. That is now not safety. It's spiritual abuse. She shared in a latest sit-down down. And right here's in which it gets even extra heartbreaking. Gina says there had been moments where she blamed herself, for now not being more forgiving, for questioning her husband, for now not submitting the manner the church regularly demands of women in ministry. This internalized guilt stored her caught in a cycle of silence and self-doubt till Pearson's passing compelled her to confront what she had buried for see you later. She additionally revealed that positive church board members and non-secular advisors knew approximately the issues in her marriage. They have been made aware about the infidelity, the emotional detachment, even the voice recordings. But in each case, she claims the message was the identical. Do not cross public. Don't destroy his ministry. Don't destroy a black guy's legacy. This rhetoric, Gina says, is part of a bigger problem in spiritual areas. Protective platforms over humans, titles over reality. And now, after years of sporting that burden in silence, she's decided to turn the script. The church failed me. The machine failed me, however I may not fail myself anymore. She said, this time I picked to talk. Her announcement is resonating across social media in which thousands of girls, especially former first women, ministry other halves, and even girl pastors, are beginning to share similar stories. A quiet motion is forming, demanding duty, now not simply from character leaders, however from the church structures that allow this silence to fester. And here's the component that genuinely exposes the hypocrisy. Most of the same non-secular leaders who forged Carlton Pearson out for preaching inclusion persevered to uphold and guard others with some distance darker histories, abuse, scandal, moral failure so long as they did not mission the theological reputation quo. So the query turned into Carlton condemned for his doctrine or due to the fact his fall might have compelled the church to confess its personal failings. Either manner, Gina Gauthier is no longer interested in defensive everyone's photo. For her, this isn't about vengeance. It's approximately reality, restoration, reclamation. But just when you assume it ends there, wait till you hear what Gina recently said about Bishop Pearson's very last days and the way even in demise, some secrets nonetheless linger. Inside the weeks main up to Bishop Carlton Pearson's passing, many assumed he was surrounded by way of peace, forgiveness, and own family. The picture-ideal image of a person making peace with his past. Public statements defined him as resting conveniently and reflecting on his existence as paintings. But in line with Gina Marie Gauthier, that version of activity's simplest tells a part of the story, and the relaxation is a long way more complicated. In a quiet however effective interview shared simply days after his demise, Gina revealed that she hadn't spoken to Carlton within the months before his passing. Their final communiqué, she says, changed into cold, remote, and unfinished. Despite years of marriage and the circle of relatives they built together, there was no formal reconciliation, no apology, no closure. All and sundry talks about peace, but now not anyone receives the chance to make peace earlier than they die, she stated, and some wounds by no means simply heal. What she disclosed next, however, shook anyone listening. Consistent with Gina, there have been conversations taking place behind the scenes, criminal, monetary, and even spiritual, that hinted at a deeper stage of anxiety among Carlton and those in his internal circle during his very last 12 months. She advised that those closest to him controlled his narrative, protecting the public from the extra chaotic aspects of his decline. She didn't say this out of spite, she explained, but out of a feel of justice. She believes the photo of Carlton's peaceful passing became in part manufactured, cautiously curated to hold his legacy at the same time as burying the ache that had festered for decades. One mainly haunting element she shared changed into a non-public letter she claims to have received years in the past, long before his analysis, where Carlton recounted some of his personal failures but never dispatched it to her formally. She only discovered it through a third birthday party. In that letter, in line with Gina, he wrote, "I constructed a country for others to comply with, however I forgot the lady who helped build it with me. It's a line that has echoed deeply with listeners. A painful admission from a man who, perhaps too past due, diagnosed the value of chasing effect at the price of intimacy. But Gina didn't percentage this letter for pity. She shared it to illuminate the quiet affliction of unfinished stories, how now not all endings come with a neat bow or Hollywood closure. She additionally talked about the complex grief she now incorporates. A combination of disappointment, betrayal, nostalgia, and unanswered questions. Because no matter the whole lot, the lies, the loneliness, the silence, she nonetheless loved him. Perhaps now not the man he had become, however the guy she as soon as believed in. Grief is merciless while love was complicated. I didn't cry simply because he died. I cried due to the fact we in no way clearly healed, she confessed. But possibly the most powerful takeaway from Gina's story isn't simply what she revealed about Carlton. It is what she reclaimed for herself. After years of being silenced, disregarded, and forgotten, she has finally observed her voice. And she or he's no longer on my own. Her story has sparked a bigger conversation, approximately girls in ministry, approximately religious duty, approximately how the church handles scandal, and approximately what actual healing looks like. For each Gina Gauthier available, this story is greater than gossip or controversy. It's a replicate, a caution, and most significantly, a call for exchange.